All right, role-playing game enthusiasts, 40K enthusiasts, do I say Age of Sigmar enthusiasts, will we see a resurrection of the Games Workshop role-playing systems? Would there be a possibility, as Games Workshop seeks to dominate and leverage the most potent FOMO that any of us have ever seen in a long time, is there the possibility to move into or back into role-playing games? I'd like to see it, being a GW enthusiast, being a Warhammer 40K enthusiast, and a long-time, do we even say classic at this point? Classic Dark Heresy RPG player. But I don't think in terms of a business model, Games Workshop will be going back to this, because they currently have their two role-playing systems, one that's no longer produced, Blackstone Fortress, and one that had a little bit of a bumpy ride rollout, but I'm sure they'll correct it, Cursed City. Those are their role-playing systems. Fritz, those are Quest board games. Well, let's hold that thought for a second and kind of ask the question. You have a great IP. I mean, what pulls us into Warhammer 40K? For me, social aspects, rolling dice, playing games with friends, meeting new friends, exploring that grimdark. Certainly, it's the miniatures. The miniatures are fantastic. Production quality components, absolutely fantastic. But it's the narrative. You know, it's the space Romans. It's the space bugs. It's the space undead robots. It's that narrative of the Golden Throne, of chaos, of eternal warfare, of heroic deeds, of tabletop glory in the name of Khorne. Whatever it's going to be, it is the narrative that pulls me in and keeps me into 40K. So it's natural you want to leverage that. Games Workshop is leveraging that and exploiting it through the models. You see the models, you get hyped up. You think about tabletop glory. I lost last week to my buddy. I'm going to hear about it all week. So I secretly buy something, paint it up, get it ready to drop that tabletop bomb next week. So it seems only fitting, if you've got a good IP, and whatever you think about Games Workshop, they have an amazing IP, leverage that to a role-playing game. Push that out into a role-playing game, and you can produce supplements and you can produce stuff to play it, and it's just like having a product and building out a clothing line for it. It's a natural extension. It's a natural extension. And I think a lot of what we saw with Dark Heresy was not only innovation in doing that and recognizing, hey, we've got this untapped revenue source, but pushing things out in that direction. What I believe they discovered, now at the time they passed that out to Fantasy Flight Games, and it was, well, even before that, Black Library, if we're talking about the classic Dark Heresy. The challenge here, and they made a lot of money, and they made a good amount of money, but the challenge why I think they realized it was not supporting long-term, and this leads to Inquisitor, the oversized Inquisitor game and Inquisitor models, which I did have the chance to play. I somewhat enjoyed it, simply because I don't think I played it enough. So I don't really have an opinion, a well-formed or fair opinion to that system. But I will say it was intriguing, and the miniature scale, the heroic scale of the miniatures was really, really cool. I really enjoyed that step up. But I think what Games Workshop discovered was, and I don't mean this in a negative way because I'm certainly a role-playing game enthusiast, there's not that much money in it. You buy the book and you're done, and not everyone has to have the book. So if there's 5 of us getting ready to play, just Fritz needs the book, and we've got D10s everywhere. Even if I buy the custom GW D10s, I've got D10s everywhere to play it. And my 4 other friends or my 5 friends, they don't need copies of it. Where 40K, everyone needs a copy of the books. They need their own armies. They need their own paints. It's just economy of scale. If we're playing Kill Team, you need your own army. You need your own resources. Even if you don't have your own army and I'm lending you one, or I'm lending you one of my war bands, somebody's invested 1-to-1. Role-playing games, we see this with D&D. We explored this last week. I'm still not quite sure how Dungeons & Dragons is making all this money, because many, many players that I know, and admittedly it might just be my local meta, that's not indicating the whole D&D community, most players have a set of dice and that's it. everything else is digital or non-existent. It's the DMs that do most of the heavy lifting, or the true hardcore collectors who like to have one of everything on their shelf and are really massive role-playing enthusiasts. So I think GW looked and put out this amazing product and was like, yes, we made some money, but where's that other stuff? Where's that other stuff to sell? Now, if we go back to Inquisitor, we've got the game, we've got the miniatures. It was a scale step up, so you can't use your regular 40K miniatures. But the question is, how do you get someone to buy into a hybrid game? If we look at Dungeons & Dragons, and again, pulling on my own D&D experience and the games that I have run in the past and the games I'm running now and what I plan to run, I run games that are real old school AD&D, literally AD&D and Kryn. You've got your hex paper, you better be taking notes in the map, and that's it. It's all in the mind. Most D&D games that I run are a hybrid of pen and paper, but also we've got hex maps, we've got dry erase, we've got miniatures, and we're playing some scale. Sometimes I really beef things up, pull out all the Dragon Forge and Dungeon Forge, and play a full kind of scaled game, real-time one-to-one with smoke effects and music and everything else. And I do enjoy that, but it is certainly a lot of work from that perspective. And I'm just going to make a note here to make a vlog on that, because when done right, it's amazing. When done not that well, it's a real drag. But Games Workshop, how could they, if they designed a role-playing system where you needed tons and tons and tons of miniatures, I think this is where the split is. The 40K enthusiasts or Age of Sigmar enthusiasts are going to say, well, I'm not going to buy into that. I'm already playing my tabletop. And the role-playing, the RPG players out there, they're going to look and be like, I'm not buying into that. That's crazy. It's a miniatures game. So they came up with the hybrid. So I think that's why that's been kind of parked for a while. The hybrid, Warhammer Quest. This idea, look, it's a quest-based game. It's got a story, like a campaign, like D&D. I'm not going to give away any spoilers for Blackstone Fortress, but you're going into the Blackstone Fortress to uncover a mystery. You've got a quest. You've got multiple side quests. You've got expansion packs, which are additional quest modules. The game itself, you could have a GM control the opposing forces. That is one way to play it. But the game is randomized. The game's AI controls everything. So from that perspective, you go on a quest, you don't really know what's happening and you have to react. There's that mystery, much like a role-playing game. But the fusion is miniatures. You play with the miniatures in the game and utilize miniatures, and the expansions have miniatures, and then you pull in miniatures from other lines, based on chapter approved or based on the annuals, pulling that in. So I really feel like they tried the RPG thing to leverage the most out of the IP because it's already been created. There was some success, but I think the true role-playing games are the Warhammer Quest series, whether that's Blackstone Fortress or Cursed City, how that is going to evolve out.